What's up, everyone? We're here back after the break. This is Alman and Nusrat, and
Nihal Khan.
we're gonna get back into kind of episode 0. This is what this is. This is us kind of discussing what this podcast is about, what we're aiming to do with it. Just so our viewers know, at this stage, we have recorded several episodes, and we wanted to do this kind of this episode just to kind of talk a bit about what our aims are and having some experience with what we've already done. So right now, we're not talking about this as if it's something that's going to happen. It's something that has occurred. These conversations have occurred, and we're speaking about our intentions with with the content that we've created already, which hopefully you guys will soon get a hold of. So Nihal, let's talk a bit about you. You mentioned your studies briefly. I want to learn a little bit more about your experience as a community leader, as an educator, as a student. Points of growth for you, and your role here in this community now, where you're in Connecticut and you've been in different communities throughout your life. And so, what has it been like in Connecticut, and what can you say in regards to the American Muslim experience?
Yeah. So I am born and raised in a foreign country that many of you may or may not know about, called New Jersey. And having been from there, we had a solid Muslim upbringing, I'd say, because there was a large Muslim community where we were. Specifically, I was in North Jersey in Bergen County. I grew up in a town called Paramus, which was very close to several mosques and Islamic centers in the area. When I was in high school, I decided that I wanted to go and learn my faith. So I enrolled at a madrasa, Darul Uloom New York, in Queens, in Jamaica, and I kind of got the fundamentals of like my faith.
Did
of
you
just
do
life.
that on your own?
Yeah, I actually had to fight for a year to get it done. Like I think I told my dad when I was 13 when I wanted to go, or 12, and he actually tested me. So for a solid year, he's like, nope, nope, nope. Until it got to the point where, like, I'm actually kind of glad he did that, because I think kids go through a lot of fads. And that time, like, Yu-Gi-Oh was a fad, and Pokemon was a fad.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of friends who were like in Quran school, so I was like, I want to do this. So moved to Queens and stayed there for about 3 years, and then made my way back. And I finished my memorization of the Quran locally as a kid when I was like 17 or 16 or something like that, or 18. Then after that, started undergrad, and then I took a year off to study Arabic. And then
When you finished with the memorization,
yeah,
was there like a thing where you kind of came back into the real world, or were you like plugged away studying, because it takes a lot to memorize the entire Quran? But
I mean, I wasn't like full time in school, but I was like going through homeschooling and through like community college, and that experience requires like a whole different episode. But just to give it in a nutshell, so I finished when I was like 17, and I did it full time, and then I actually started college, and then I took a year off, and then went to study Arabic. Came back. I afterwards graduated with a degree in psychology and a minor in business from Montclair State University. During that time period, I worked as an assistant imam, a youth director, a chaplain. I can't even tell you how many jobs I worked in undergrad just to pay for rent, because by that time my family had moved out of the state. So I think in undergrad I worked like 11 odd jobs, like everything under the sun you could say. And Jersey was expensive, so to pay rent you do whatever you got to do. So I taught, I did like help desk, I did pizza delivery, name it, I did it. Then in 2014 I left the country. I went to Nadratul Ulama in Lucknow, where I completed a Alamiya degree, which for those of you that don't know, that's basically like a bachelor's or a master's degree in Islamic studies, depending on how you measure it. Right. Came back here, was in Atlanta for a year working as a full-time imam, and then I made my way to Hartford to complete my my master's degree, where I was at the Hartford Seminary, where I graduated with a master's in religious studies. A year that program was actually spent at the Harvard Divinity School in Massachusetts. That's what it led to, and I'm working on a couple of other things, and I actually hope to eventually make my way to law school, but involved with the community. I love teaching. I love to work with other people, and I love to connect with people who may or may not be a part of the Muslim community, and just kind of work with people at a greater level. So there's a lot of interfaith, intra-faith, and just growth that it comes down to. And I think the point of the podcast, or for myself to be on a podcast, is that I don't think we do enough outreach. And when I say we, I mean the clergy class, for the lack of a better word, or people who have their knowledge certifications. I feel like we don't do enough outreach. And the point of it is to do that, is to create a space where we can talk about issues that may be bothering us. Me and you were talking about it. I'm going to the Muslim Mental Health Conference in Chicago in a couple of weeks. And, we're going to record several episodes there, one on infertility, one on spiritual abuse, another one on mental health in Islam. And there's so many subjects that the community is not speaking about. And again, the point isn't to come at it from a negative aspect. As a community leader and as a community worker, nothing is perfect, right? What you're going to get out of the community is what you put into the community. Right. And there's a lot of people on the sideline and the benches that will be giving information. Like there's a lot of Stephen A's, I like to say, right? Mm-hmm. For those of you that don't know who Stephen A is, Stephen A. Smith is a commentator on ESPN, and he's always got an opinion on everything, right? Yeah. And the point isn't to create a bunch of commentators, right? I mean, there's a lot of people who are keyboard warriors. There's a lot of people on the internet, right, who talk about Islam and the faith, and they talk about it from their ivory towers, or they'll speak about it in a way which is completely defunct from the community and the reality on the ground. Mm-hmm. So our hope...
they're critical, but they're not actually taking part in solving the problem, or they're not aware. Yeah,
I have a better term. In New Jersey, we just call they're full of crap. Okay. That's literally what it comes down to, right? And my personality, the type of person that I am, I don't try to mince my words. So it's important to weigh your words, but I think we need to call a spade, right? And I think that one of the points of the podcast is to bring in a perspective which is very much rooted in reality, is that the community should be a sacred space, right? The community center should be a sacred space. How we talk about the community should be a sacred aspect as well. But those people who come from the outside to just destroy it from the inside, people ought to be up in arms about that. But we're all up in arms about the wrong things. Like our anxiety is going up. Like I said, you open up your phone and people are saying, whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. But that's not from the tradition that we come from, right? Like from the tradition that we come from, it's very, very much fixated on having good speech, but at the same time, it doesn't shy away from using harsh words against those that are harsh with the people, right? That are harsh with the community, that want to destroy it from the inside. And I think that has to kind of be brought into perspective, is that we need to start having conversations. So like one thing at the Islamic Center of Connecticut, we stopped doing, though we have it in small doses, we don't do lectures anymore. Right. We do community discussions. Mm-hmm. So often what we'll do is I will bring a speaker, and how me and you are talking right now, we'll have a similar discussion openly with everyone about a certain subject. So like, for example, we had a discussion on marriage, divorce, and relationships, and then we followed that up with our podcast. But like, that's the thing. If you want to watch a lecture, go on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Right. But if you want to engage with the community, we need to engage with our thoughts, our feelings, and the ideas that are sitting well with us or aren't sitting well with us. So I think all of that has to be brought into perspective in regards to growing the community. So I'm hoping that with this podcast between me and you, that we're able to kind of shed some light on those issues.
Can you touch upon the necessity and the benefits of having third spaces? Because as you know, the listeners may know already, if you heard the sponsor, The Mantle, which is, this is a Mantle podcast, and so it's brought to you by the same organization, which is based upon inclusivity, understanding, and so for those of you who don't know what a third space is, maybe Nihal, if you can actually summarize what that is and why it's important for us to have one.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I think there's a disclaimer to make. A lot of people are very what's the word that I'm looking for? They get turned off by the idea of the third space, right?
Well, can you explain what a third space is?
Yeah. So, but let me get into that in a second. But I think people end up thinking it's a masjid substitute or a mosque substitute, which it's not, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it gets a bad rep for that. But the third space is often characterized, and I think one person, Ray Oldenburg, who wrote the book, I think The Good Great Place, or The Great Good Place. I always get the title messed up. But he talks about it in the perspective of coffee shops in society, which we just happen to be in one. Right. It talks about the idea of barber shops in society, right? And if you're not Muslim, then bars as well, right? They're third spaces which happen to be between the between your home and your workplace, where you go from one world to the other, but the third space is supposed to be a transitionary space. It's supposed to help you get from point A to point C through being point B. And within the Islamic tradition, there is that aspect, and I think people forget about that. Like, there definitely is that aspect. We see in the beginning of the Sirah in Mecca, when the Muslims were being persecuted, that they would go and reside and learn in Darul Arqam, which was a private, safe space for them to learn their faith in a way which they would not be antagonized by the outside world. And not only that, historically, when you go to Turkey, when you go to different parts of the Arab world, when you go to Granada, Spain, when you go to all these different aspects of North Africa, of India, Pakistan, even Central Asia, there's the aspect of the Zawiya, right? The Zawiya was the place where one would build their spiritual their spiritual centers, right, in their hearts, that they would better themselves as people. And it was never considered a permanent space. Actually, the Zawiya was actually seen as a place where people could stay overnight if they were travelers. So that's what it was. It was always this temporary space that would lead people to become better people, and it would lead them to the masjid. It would eventually lead them to the Muslim community. And I think that's how we should look at our community in light of building the community should be done in light of how the Sirah happened, in the life of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace be upon him. And that isn't looked at often. People always say, "Oh, masjid has been built. Everyone has to go into the masjid." Right. And like I think we spoke about this before, like the Tablighi Jamaat, right? And sometimes people may hate on them, but there's something beautiful about that. They go out to people, right? And they try to bring them to the masjid, but if not, they'll try to speak to them where they're at, right? They'll try to understand where that person is, right? Because at the end, they'll go to their house and they'll try to invite them. If that person says yes, wonderful. If not, then that is what it is. But even then, within our faith tradition, we see that people didn't always make it to the masjid. And in Mecca specifically, they didn't specifically go right into the haram. Like, people weren't ready for that. Right. People lived in a way in which they weren't ready to talk about their faith. And we see that today, especially in the post 9/11, living in the the era of Donald Trump, where openly people are literally talking bad about Muslims. Right. People feel turned off from talking about their faith, right? And that has to be cultivated, where if somebody's not ready to go to the masjid, then either we go to them or we create an intermediary space that we could speak to them in, and they can have those conversations. In
a place where they feel like they cannot speak honestly about how they feel and their experience. I remember one time we had an event at the Mantle where a girl talked about how she grew up in a very secular environment, and secularism was encouraged. And as she, there you go. Secularism wasn't encouraged, and then she kind of, out of her own, a result of her own decision was to kind of look into faith and to try to understand things from a different perspective. And once again, understanding like the real, the logic behind it, the proofs for belief and stuff like that. And then she was compelled to study more, and she discovered her path doing that. And so but the thing was that she felt comfortable coming to the Mantle and talking about that, because she didn't feel that she can go to a mosque and be like, I didn't grow up believing in this, and I had to, or just talking about some of those ideas can be difficult. And it's not just that. I mean, like, we were talking about theological things like belief in God, right, and stuff like that. But then there's also other issues that people just are really uncomfortable talking about. We're talking about things like pornography addiction. We're talking about relationship issues, things that are not talked about openly for one reason or another when they should be. So one hope is that the third spaces like the Mantle would inspire people to be genuine, to be authentic, to talk about things that need to be talked about. And then that environment carries over to the mosque, in that then the people running the mosque, the boards, and will begin to understand that, okay, we need to actually have programming that's relevant, that is also functions as a third space that people can come in and kind of find their home here. Right? Yeah,
I think that's fair. So for those of you that are listening, we invite you to tune in. We invite you to listen to our episodes. We invite you to interact with us. We invite you to talk to us. We invite you to contact us and engage with us. And if there's something that you found beneficial, definitely let us know. Don't just let us know if you don't not like something. So
Exactly. That tends to happen online. It's just like,
so we
you guys
hope.
suck.
Yeah, right. Y'all suck. That's it. There's nothing good to y'all. Right.
Yeah.
It's funny. I just did that in like a southern accent. Be damned with y'all.
I don't know if that's authentically Southern. So if you did that wrong, anyone from the South, let us know.
Please don't.
But anyways,
I think that's a good amount of stuff that we spoke about. So thank you. Please subscribe. Please share. And thank you for joining us on Faith in Fine Print.
yeah. And I'll just say this to the camera here. Today's been a really long day for me. So if my points were just all over, I tried to do my best to kind of articulate what this podcast will inshallah be about. Nihal's background, my background. But I hope you do come back again and listen to the episodes that we have coming out with some amazing guests, and give us your feedback. Connect with us online, like Nihal said, because the community won't be a community without you, and you, the person listening to this right now, have something to offer. You have a voice, you have a personality, you have a soul, you have a gift from God, and I hope you share that gift with us and communicate with us. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, online. And this has been Faith in Fine Print. Thanks so much. Until next time.
With Alman, Nusrat, and Nihal Khan.
Yeah. Until next time.
And shout out to Story and Soil Coffee.
That's a really important point. Story
and Soil.
and soil.
Shout out to Mike Acosta.
Yes, Mike Acosta, thank you. If you're watching, if you're listening, he's hiding on set somewhere in the back. But thank you. Shout out to them for letting us.
Mike, you can wave if you want.
Yeah, if you're back there.
Yeah, we have you in the
see his
shot.
hat
I can
there.
see his hat.
Um,
There he is.
So if you're in Hartford, do check out their spot. It's the best coffee that you'll find in Hartford.
Hands down.
And their place is awesome, and I hope they invite us back. But yeah. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Take care.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.